When we embrace silence as a spiritual discipline, we step into a deeper relationship with God. Silence allows us to pause and recognize that our strength does not come from our ability to speak or act, but from our trust in Him. It's an opportunity to remind ourselves of God's promises and to meditate on His Word, which provides clarity and peace even in the midst of chaos. Silence also shifts our perspective. When we refrain from reacting impulsively, we invite God to show us the bigger picture. In those moments, we see situations not through the lens of our emotions, but through the lens of His purpose. This allows us to respond with wisdom and grace rather than fear or frustration. Silence becomes a tool that aligns us with God's will and opens our hearts to His guidance. Furthermore, silence is a declaration of victory. By choosing not to engage in unnecessary conflicts or defend ourselves when provoked, we acknowledge that God's power is greater than any earthly challenge. The Bible reminds us, "Do not repay anyone evil for evil. Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone." Romans 12 verse 17. This restraint demonstrates faith in God's justice, which is far more effective and enduring than any defense we could offer. In moments when we feel the need to speak out, silence can also serve as a powerful testimony. It shows others that our confidence is not in our own ability to control the outcome, but in God's sovereignty. This quiet trust can inspire those around us to seek the peace and strength that come from relying on Him. Finally, silence prepares us for God's blessings. When we wait on Him and resist the urge to rush ahead, we allow Him to work in ways that exceed our expectations. The lessons learned in the stillness, patience, humility, and dependence on God equip us for the greater responsibilities and opportunities that lie ahead. By trusting His timing, we experience the fullness of His provision and purpose. In essence, silence is more than the absence of words. It is an active expression of faith, surrender, and trust. It positions us to hear God's voice, see His hand at work, and witness His power to bring about His perfect will. When we embrace silence, we create space for God to move in our lives, transforming challenges into opportunities for growth and victories that glorify Him. Let us remember that silence, guided by faith, is not passive. It is a bold declaration that we trust God to lead, defend, and provide in every situation. Silence, when embraced with faith and intention, becomes a transformative force in our spiritual journey. It creates space for God to teach us, refine us, and reveal His purpose in ways that words or actions cannot achieve. It's in the quiet moments that God works most profoundly, shaping us to align with His will and preparing us for the plans He has set before us. One of the most powerful aspects of silence is its ability to deepen our intimacy with God. In the stillness, we are better able to discern His voice, free from the distractions and noise of the world. As Psalm 46 verse 10 reminds us, "Be still, and know that I am God." This stillness is not only a pause from external activity but an internal posture of surrender, acknowledging that God is in control and that His wisdom surpasses our understanding. Silence also fosters spiritual maturity. When we resist the urge to react impulsively, we demonstrate self-control, a fruit of the Spirit, and grow in patience and humility. This growth equips us to handle greater challenges and responsibilities with grace and wisdom, allowing God's character to be reflected in our lives. Every act of restraint becomes an opportunity for God to work through us, making us instruments of His peace and vessels of His love. Moreover, silence allows God to handle battles on our behalf. When we step back and choose not to engage in conflict or defend ourselves, we invite Him to intervene in ways that bring lasting resolution and justice. As Exodus 14 verse 14 reminds us, "The Lord will fight for you, you need only to be still." This trust in His power to act frees us from the burdens of worry and control, enabling us to rest in His promises. Silence also transforms how we engage with others. It allows us to listen more deeply, respond with empathy, and build stronger relationships rooted in understanding rather than contention. By choosing silence in moments of tension or misunderstanding, we create opportunities for reconciliation and healing. This intentional quietness becomes a testimony of God's grace and love working within us. Lastly, silence prepares us for God's blessings. In the waiting, God is refining our hearts, building our faith, and aligning circumstances to fulfill this perfect plan. While it may be challenging to remain still in the face of uncertainty, this waiting is not wasted. It is a time of preparation, growth, and strengthening, a reminder that God's timing is always perfect. In conclusion, silence is not a sign of passivity or weakness, but a profound act of trust in God's sovereignty. It is a declaration of faith, a commitment to humility, and an acknowledgement of God's ultimate control over every aspect of our lives. By embracing silence, we position ourselves to hear His voice, witness His power, and experience the fullness of His plans. Let us approach moments of silence with confidence, knowing that in the stillness, God is at work, orchestrating His purposes for our good and His glory. Silence is a tool that not only strengthens our faith, but also cultivates our spiritual endurance. It teaches us the discipline of waiting on God, resisting the urge to take matters into our own hands. This waiting is not passive, it's an active trust in His promises, an acknowledgement that His ways are higher than ours and that His timing is always perfect. In moments of silence, we learn to shift our focus from the problem to the provider. Instead of obsessing over the challenges before us, we are reminded of God's sovereignty and ability to handle every situation. This realignment of perspective allows us to experience His peace, even in the midst of uncertainty or conflict. Philippians 4 verse 7 assures us that the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Silence opens the door for this peace to flood our lives. Additionally, silence can serve as a profound act of worship. By choosing to hold our tongue, we declare that we trust God's wisdom and justice above our own. It is a way of saying, "Lord, I surrender my words, my emotions, and my need for control to you." This act of surrender honors God and invites His power to move in ways that our efforts could never achieve. Silence also cultivates discernment. When we pause and refrain from speaking hastily, we give ourselves the opportunity to hear God's voice more clearly. In the quiet, He provides guidance and insight that might otherwise be drowned out by the noise of our own thoughts or emotions. Proverbs 3 verses 5 to 6 encourages us to trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding, and all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your path straight. Silence helps us to lean into this promise, allowing God to direct our steps. Moreover, silence serves as a testimony to others. In a world that often values loudness and immediate reactions, choosing silence can speak volumes about the strength of our faith. It shows others that our confidence is not in our own ability to solve problems, but in God's ability to bring resolution and victory. This quiet confidence can inspire those around us to seek the same peace and assurance found in trusting Him. Finally, silence positions us to experience the full manifestation of God's plans. By resisting the urge to rush ahead or force outcomes, we allow Him to unfold His purpose in His perfect timing. Isaiah 40 verse 31 reminds us that those who wait upon the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. Silence is a demonstration of this waiting, a declaration of faith that God's plans are worth the wait. In conclusion, silence is far more than the absence of words. It is a powerful spiritual practice that aligns us with God's will, deepens our trust in Him, and prepares us for the blessings He has in store. It teaches us humility, fosters discernment, and allows us to rest in His peace. When we choose silence, we create space for God to work in and through us, leading us toward His greater purpose. Let us embrace silence as a sacred opportunity to trust, grow, and experience the fullness of God's love and provision. Silence is a gift that transforms our hearts and strengthens our walk with God. It allows us to develop a deeper awareness of His presence and a greater sensitivity to His voice. In a world filled with noise, distractions, and the constant pressure to respond, silence becomes an act of rebellion against chaos and an intentional alignment with divine peace. One of the most profound aspects of silence is its ability to cultivate humility. In moments of conflict or misunderstanding, the decision to remain silent is a surrender of pride and an acknowledgement that we do not have to fight every battle ourselves. It's a recognition that God's wisdom and justice far exceed our own. This humility not only protects our relationships, but also fosters peace within our own hearts. As James 4 verse 10 reminds us, humble yourselves before the Lord, and He will lift you up. Silence also teaches us patience, a virtue that is often difficult to practice in a fast-paced world. When we choose not to rush into action or speak impulsively, we give God the space to work. Waiting in silence requires trust, but it also builds resilience and faith. It reminds us that God's timing is perfect and that His plans are unfolding even when we cannot see the full picture. As Isaiah 30 verse 15 says, "And quietness and trust is your strength." Furthermore, silence allows us to reflect on our words and motives. Before speaking, we can ask ourselves, are my words coming from a place of love, wisdom, and truth, or are they driven by anger, fear, or the need to be right? This self-awareness helps us align our speech with God's will, ensuring that our words build up rather than tear down. Proverbs 21 verse 23 advises, "Those who guard their mouths and their tongues keep themselves from calamity." In moments of silence, we also open the door for God to speak to us and through us. By quieting our own voices, we can hear His guidance more clearly. This intentional listening not only strengthens our relationship with God, but also equips us to respond to situations with wisdom and grace. The stillness becomes a sanctuary where we encounter His presence and receive the clarity we need to move forward. Silence is not merely the absence of noise or action, it is a spiritual discipline that requires courage and faith. It challenges us to trust in God's sovereignty and to let go of our desire for control. It's in this surrender that we find freedom, a freedom from the pressure to prove ourselves, the anxiety of trying to fix everything, and the exhaustion of striving in our own strength. Ultimately, silence is a declaration of trust in God's power and promises. It says, "Lord, I trust you to fight my battles, to guide my steps, and to bring about your will in your perfect time." By embracing silence, we demonstrate our faith in His goodness and our willingness to rely on Him completely. In return, we receive His peace, His wisdom, and the assurance that He is working all things together for our good. As we walk this journey of faith, let us remember the power of silence. Let it become a tool for reflection, a practice of humility, and a source of strength. In silence, we position ourselves to hear God's voice, to witness His hand at work, and to experience the depth of His love and grace. Let us embrace silence not as a weakness but as a profound act of faith that invites God's power into our lives. Lesson learned: the power of silence in trusting God. The above content teaches a profound lesson about the power of silence as an act of faith, humility, and trust in God. In a world that encourages us to react quickly, defend ourselves, and take control of every situation, silence stands as a countercultural and deeply spiritual discipline. It challenges us to relinquish our need for control and instead trust in God's sovereignty. One key lesson is that silence is not passivity but active faith. It is a declaration that we trust God to fight our battles and guide our lives. As Exodus 14 verse 14 reminds us, the Lord will fight for you, you need only to be still. By remaining silent, we create space for God to work on our behalf in ways we cannot yet see. This silence demonstrates our reliance on Him rather than on our own understanding or ability. Silence also cultivates humility and patience. It teaches us to let go of pride and the need to justify ourselves, allowing God to be our defender. In moments of conflict or misunderstanding, choosing silence shows maturity and restraint, reflecting a heart aligned with God's wisdom. This act of humility opens the door for God's favor and allows Him to work in our lives without interference. Another important lesson is that silence is a tool for spiritual growth. It provides an opportunity for self-reflection, helping us evaluate whether our words align with God's will. By holding back, we avoid speaking out of anger or fear and instead respond with wisdom and grace. Ultimately, silence positions us to hear God's voice and witness His hand at work. It reminds us that His timing is perfect and His plans are greater than ours. Choosing silence allows us to experience peace, trust in His promises, and grow in faith.